Okay, so here we are in Photoshop. I have opened up the template that I have provided for you. The rubric and the template are in the content course content folder on Blackboard. So go grab those if you haven't already. And instead of creating a new file in Photoshop, we're going to be working from this one that I've already created. It's standard size, so it's I don't know 10 by 14 ish, something like that. It's the proportions of the card. And you'll see that we already have a few layers over here. Layer 0 here is our white border around the edge. Layer 1 and layer 2 are our titles, and then layer 4 is our title card, or our nameplate down at the bottom. Essentially, you can check out these two titles and choose whichever one you like, and then just turn off the visibility of the other one. So we'll go with this one, for instance. And then we're just going to start working. So you can see that I have up a few palettes here. I have the swatches palette and the brush palette. These are probably going to be two of the more important ones for this assignment. We're going to be working almost specifically with the paintbrush tool. If you need to use a couple of other tools, that's definitely fine. One thing you'll notice, so I just hovered over this, and it says, brush tool, paint custom brush strokes, and it says learn how. That's actually not too bad of an idea if you're not familiar with this stuff. I'm definitely going to show you as much as I can. But if you're by yourself and you don't have the option to have me there with you, feel free to hover over these tools and kind of just like learn a little bit about them, see what it says they do. Especially do the learn how if you have the ability to, and that'll teach you a little bit more about the program. So we're going to start by just creating, let's say, a background. We're going to separate a lot of our drawing into multiple layers with Photoshop. With the pixel portrait drawing, it was important that we had at least 3 layers because each one was a different frame that we turned into our animation. With this drawing and a lot of the future drawings, we're going to want to keep certain things in different layers because that will allow us to basically move things around later on as though each piece is separate from each other piece. We could come in here and draw everything in one layer, but it would be kind of like if we were making a painting and we painted everything on a canvas and then we wanted to come back and take, say we paint ourselves, and I mentioned a car. So we paint ourselves and we paint a car behind us. If that's an oil painting, there's no way to move that car in front of the person, right? Because we painted it behind. That's not the way paintings work. Well, the good thing about Photoshop is that if we do something behind or in front of something else, as long as it's in a different layer, we can move those two objects independently of each other. So that's why we're going to use a lot of layers in all of our drawings to make sure that we can keep things independent and have as much flexibility as we can possibly manage. So to create a background, we're going to want a layer that's behind everything else. This is our new layer button, so we can click there and create a new layer. I have this one with nothing in it that we're going to create our background in. And we're going to create just a nice little gradient. Now, there are multiple ways to do gradients. The gradient is in the paint bucket tool here in the flyout menu. So click and hold there. The paint bucket just paints flat color everywhere. So that's fine, but I want to do something that's a little bit more unique than that. So we're going to do a gradient. Now, if I click and hold and press the gradient tool, then we get our gradient options up here. And I'm going to click the arrow here, and we're going to click green to black, and then we're going to double click on that, and that'll bring up our gradient panel here. And now from here, I'm going to change the 2 colors. Let's go, I'm going to do a purple and maybe a lighter purple. Yeah, that's cool. Okay, so there's our 2 colors, purple to purple. I'm going to do a radial gradient. So we have options, different options for gradients. Feel free to click on each one of these and then create your own gradient and see what happens. So this is our standard gradient. Basically what I'm going to click and drag. So click here, drag to here, and then it will create a gradient based on where I started and where I stopped. That's a very smooth one, right? I could also do something like this. If I click and drag at an angle, you'll see that it creates the gradient at an angle, right? if I want to do the radial, say I want my character is going to be probably somewhere in the center. Maybe I know his head's going to be like right there, right? And I want to do something cool that kind of looks like it radiates out from his head. And I can do that, and now when I draw the head, it'll be kind of in the center of this sort of like soft spotlight. So I kind of like that. That's pretty nice. So let's move on from there. Let's say this is our background. We can double click and type background there. Click a new layer, because I definitely do not want to paint onto my background. I want to paint above it. And we're going to start from here. We're going to start drawing. So you already know a little bit about the pencil tool. The pencil tool is going to work slightly differently in this assignment because we're not working in 50 by 50 pixels. We're working in a giant image with a lot of pixels. But feel free to experiment around with a pencil tool. It will allow you to get nice line work. You can also use the paintbrush to get similar line work. And if you're drawing with a tablet, you may find that the paintbrush is actually better because it'll allow you to get pressure. And what I mean by that is, depending on the amount of pressure you use, depending on your tablet, I think your tablets have this, depending on the amount of pressure you use, you can get light stroke, thin stroke, thick stroke, all that kind of stuff. You can get a lot of variation with it. So I actually don't have a tablet here at home, which is a little unfortunate. So forgive me, I'm going to be drawing with my mouse, which is going to look a little crummy, but I'm going to do my best and just kind of bear with me. Now you can go about drawing in a million different ways, but I'm going to talk about two main ways as far as this assignment. One is to just use the paintbrush tool to sort of paint and then come back and paint on top of. The other way is to use, I'm going to show you the paintbrush tool as well in order to do the second style, and that is to draw an outline, sort of a cartoon style black outline, and then come back in and fill color inside of it. Now, if you're doing that, we're going to start with our paintbrush tool here. When we have our paintbrush tool, we get all of our options along the top. I also, like I said, have this paintbrush palette open. And you'll notice that it allows us to paint. We can choose soft round here, paint something softer. We also have options right here to modify the size and the hardness. Here is just the size, but hardness is the sort of fuzziness of the edge, right? You can see here hard round and soft round. Those are the differences there. If you're going to be doing this black outline, what I would suggest is using the hard round. And I'm going to get black here as my foreground color, and now that's obviously a little too thick for an outline. So what I'm going to do is shrink the size. You can do that by coming up here and simply making a smaller size, or you can use the bracket keys on the keyboard. The bracket keys are directly above the return key towards the right hand side of the keyboard, so you can use left bracket to make it smaller, right back bracket to make it larger. So that looks decent. You don't want to make your outline too thick if you're going to be doing a black outline drawing. And then let's try and do an arm. See if I can make that work. So I know if I want to kind of emulate the Garbage Pail Kids style, then I might want it to be a little fatter. Right? And obviously that's a little crummy, right? I wish I had the tablet here to do better, but we'll go with this. Okay. So a couple of things. Now I want to make sure that that as I'm working, I'm getting rid of lines that I know I don't need. So for instance, if this is the inside of the hand here, I know I probably want this line to be gone. And that's a little bit of a mistake. And that's okay. Mistakes are fine. We can always get rid of them. We're going to use our eraser tool to come back in and erase. Make sure we get it as clean as we can. This will be a little bit easier with your tablet. And then now I'm going to come back and try and fill that in so it looks pretty clean there. You can use your eraser tool to get pointed lines. It's one way to do it. You can also do that by your using a different brush or using a brush with a variable pressure. So this is just kind of coming back in and tightening this up a little bit. Let's see, we probably don't really like that very much. It's a little better. Okay, that's not too bad. Sure, so like that's the inside of a hand, right? So essentially the way this would work is it would be like head's going to be, obviously head's in the wrong area, but whatever, we're just going to do an arm. And then from here, we can start painting. Now, that would be, what I would recommend if you're going to do black outline is to have a layer that is just for your outlines. And do your whole drawing, your black outline in one layer, and then come back and put a layer underneath it that we can now paint inside of. So let's assume that this black line drawing is done. I've finished all the head and the body, and it looks great, whatever. But obviously, we're just going to be focusing on this arm here. We're going to come back to our paintbrush tool, and we're going to go in. I can use the swatches here that are standard, or I can of course go in and double click and pick any color I want, a specific shade. I'm just going to start with, let's say, this peach color, and then I'm going to go, I'm going to make a larger brush. And I'm going to come in here and just sort of fill in the arm. If you happen to make a mistake and go over the edge, that's totally fine, because you can come back with the eraser tool and erase. So back to my eraser, and then I'll just come back and clean this up really quickly. And what this is doing is it's filling in the shape. See, I missed a spot there. That's okay. We'll come back and fix that later. So obviously we're filling in the shape with color, but the important thing is that we're doing it in a different layer. And the reason we need to do it in a different layer is because this will allow us to come in and paint different values in on top without messing with the black outline itself. Because if I turn the black outline out, you can see now what we have. We have this peach shape, and I can move it independently. Now, obviously, I won't need to do this, but it's important that we create it independently so that we can manipulate it independently. So now that we have that shape, I'm going to come back. I'm going to select, let's go with this guy right here, and we're going to get a darker. And then now I'm going to actually turn down the opacity some. And just kind of start to shape a little bit. And you'll see that obviously I'm painting inside of the hand, and I'm also painting outside of the hand a little bit. And that's okay. The reason that we painted in this layer and not a black outline layer is so we can come back and erase or do whatever we need to do without, if we're in this layer, for instance, and we paint, it's going to paint over the black outline. Obviously, we do not want to do that. So now we can come back with our eraser tool. Oops, I'm going to make sure we're in the right layer there. Clean up anything. Now, there is another way to do this that would actually be, sometimes, depending on the situation, is actually a better way to go about things. I'm going to show you that. Now, we have this shape, right, in its own layer. If I come over here to the thumbnail, this is the thumbnail of the shape, and I press Command on the keyboard, you can see that we get that little square, that little dotted line square there. If I click now, it will select everything that's in that layer. And now when we come in and paint, back to my paintbrush, let's get a highlight color. So maybe this yellow. Let's go white. And now I want to do a highlight up here on the top of the arm. You'll notice that it's not painting outside of the shape, right? So if I'm clicking and painting right now, but it's not doing anything. This is a part of Photoshop. So every time you have a selection, it will not paint outside of whatever selection you make. So we're using our command click over here to make a selection of whatever is inside the layer, and then now when we come over here and paint, it'll only allow us to paint inside of that shape. This is really beneficial most of the time. You will have certain situations where you won't be able to do it quite right because of extenuating circumstances, but for the most part, it will work really well. All right, and so now we can come out, we can deselect that. Anytime you have a question about a selection, all your selection options are up here. You want to, if you have a selection, for instance, you click Command Select there, and now you want to paint this part. Well, obviously I can't paint this part because it's outside of my selection. So we have to do what's called deselecting. So we'll go to Select, Deselect, right there, and deselect, and now we can paint outside of that. But you can see that very quickly we created this arm. We put a nice shadow on it, a nice highlight. Obviously, just like in the pixel portraits, you're going to want to determine where your light source is, and then go from there. So make sure that you have a consistent light source all throughout the image, and then apply that light source to everything that you draw. All right. So gradient for the background, paintbrush and pencil tool that you already know for the actual painting. If you want to paint without the black outline, you can essentially do exactly what I've already done, but you'll just need to be a little bit cleaner, obviously, with the edges of the pieces that you paint. That's not too much difficult, it's not much more difficult than actually drawing with a black outline, to be honest. So that's up to you as to which of those you would rather do. You will obviously need to add more definition. So if I don't use my black outline, I'm probably going to want to come in here and use something to sort of add in some line work. I don't really like that that's not opaque, but something that would give us some. That's really ugly, but you kind of get what I'm leaning towards here. You will have to add more value to sort of define your shapes and your image, where if you're not going to be using this black outline. All right, and I'm going to show you briefly the type tool, so you can put your name in here. It's very simple. We're going to click on the type tool, click anywhere in the canvas. We can type anywhere we want to. I'll just click there. Dropped in a very small type box. So we'll blow that up a little bit, and let's say so obviously my name's Alan. What's a good alliteration here? I'm going to say aimless Alan. All right, and just like you would in Microsoft Word, you can click and select the type. You can make it larger. You can also make the box larger if we need to. And essentially what you're going to do is use your move tool right here in the top left. So click and drag. You want to make sure that your type, I'm going to move this layer above this line right here because this is our box, so it needs to be in front of that. There we go. And then now we're going to select it. Make it larger. Too large there, maybe. Font is up to you. I would say try and find a font that looks like it fits fits your image. Try and center this up as best you can. And there is a good title. Okay. we learned a little bit about the Move tool. The Magic Wand tool and the Polygonal Lasso tool are also selection tools. They will allow you to make selections to your image much in the same way we did by command clicking like this. So for instance, if we want to Magic Wand, the Magic Wand picks colored pixels based on pixels that are similar to it. So for instance, if we're in this Garbage Pail Kids layer right here, if I click on the white, you'll notice that it selects all of the white. Anything that's close to the pixel that I click on that is also the same color. So if I want to select, this may come in handy. It probably won't come in, too much handy. It won't be too handy in this assignment necessarily, but I want to show it to you because it's a selection tool. And we'll talk about it a little more later on. The Lasso tool as well is a selection tool. This one allows you to make selections based on clicking and moving to another area and clicking again. So essentially, I can do this, go around to the end point, click again, and it makes a selection. And now, depending on what layer I'm in, I can use that to maybe cut and paste and move, whatever. But like I said, if you're keeping everything in multiple layers like we already have, your command click is probably going to be your best option. Okay. So that's really the main basis for this. What I would suggest is kind of get in here and do a little bit, a lot of experimenting really with the brush tools in particular. You'll notice that I only use these two right here, hard round and soft round. There are a ton of brushes, and they're really beneficial, especially with the tablet. So come in here and take some time just to goof off, find some brushes, and see what they do. See if the texture that they create is something that you think might benefit your image, or if it's just kind of weird and dumb. See, some of these brushes might be cool to like this, right? To add texture. Like, say, what if I'm I don't know, like I'm trying to make myself look like a zombie and I'm covered in mold. Well, that looks exactly like mold to me. I would probably make it green, or do like a multiple layers of it, right? So there are a lot of these that have really cool textures, really cool possibilities, and you can use them to your advantage to create part of your scenes or part of your characters. All right, so get in here, experiment a bunch, try and figure out the best way to draw. And like I said, if you want to open up some images of yourself or of things and environments or anything that you want to bring into it and sort of visually look at those things and redraw them, that's totally fine. Just keep in mind that you won't be able to utilize those in your final product. It has to be all drawing. Okay, so email me with questions. Let me know what you think and what you need help with. And good luck.